Hello everyone, Andy Logan here, creator of the Shivers, and today we're going to be taking you through a deep dive into all of our different pop-up rooms. The 6 included in the core game, the 2 in the deluxe expansions, 1 and 2, and even a fabled, what would this be, 9th room that very few have ever seen. It may or may not see the light of day one of these days, but we'll take you through that one as well. So we thought we would show you a little more depth about all the intricate details that goes into each pop-up room and show you how it evolved from its early mock-ups that I built way back in the summer of 2018 was when it started. So let's take a dive, shall we, into the first room, the peculiar parlor. You may recognize this from our various videos and our Kickstarter page. The parlor is always the main room of the house. It's got all the features that you'd expect in one of our Shivers pop-up rooms. Very cool furniture, intricate back wall detailing, pop-ups all over the place, and our story cards that slide in and out and allow you to change the story. As well as kickstands on the side that keep it open at 90 degrees. And the back side, of course, with our game map and clue window up here. But there's a few details you may not have noticed that we're going to take you through. So here you might see the piano, very visible, prominent pop-up, and its lid actually opens. You can see inside. We've illustrated the piano harp strings inside, and that pops open like that. And there's also sheet music on the front. There's a table here with a very intricate vase on it. The vase has a dragon motif, and it's full of red roses. You'll find the dragon plays prominently in Fogmore Manor's decorating schemes. And on that table is a note. You'll see there's a note sitting on it right there that you usually want to read in every episode. We also added, fairly late into the process, a whole separate grandfather clock, which is right here. And that opens as well to reveal a tiny clue window inside. You can see the grandfather clock. And look over here on this side. There's a telephone, a few episodes that utilize that telephone that is sitting there on the side table, or the east cabinet as we call it. Over here above it, you'll also see a strange little strip that has a little bell icon. Almost all rooms have a little bell pull. When you pull them, a bell rings somewhere in the house that some episodes use. There's 2 large windows. One is covered with drapes, and one is fully open to the outside. As you'll see in this one, in this episode, A1, The Lost Kitten, we have a witch flying out there. Let's look at that mantelpiece in the fireplace. It's got a Medusa head, it's got a candelabra on top, an urn full of ashes, and even a little shrunken head under a glass jar. And that shrunken head can be used by the storyteller to help give hints, such as, "Why don't you look under the rug?" Something like that, kind of pointing the players in the right direction very subtly. We have some other furniture items. We have a dragon-shaped ottoman couch and a red upholstered armchair. We have a large potted plant here on this other cabinet. And on the back wall, we've got some fireplace tongs down there next to the mantle that you can use to reach into the fireplace. And let's see, a little ventilation grating up here that can be used in certain episodes. And you have all these curious paintings on the back wall, these oval ones and the big square one in the middle. And those are actually pretty useful to look at because they usually show certain tips and steps you might want to pay attention to during the episode. So the paintings are definitely useful. And you may also recognize the large portrait in the center of the picture here, the square one. That's reused on the face of our episode guide. So the episode guide for that episode always shows what's in this front square image as you first walk in. We have a large rug here on the floor, which has many curious symbols on it. Some are zodiac symbols. And Bill, our illustrator, has even written a hidden message in a hidden coded text somewhere on this rug. And the more intrepid of you might be able to decode it. He told me where it was, but even I haven't decoded it yet, so maybe you will. Over here we have a compass rose, which is very useful, north, south, east, west, for making sure you're going in the right direction. In the game of the Shivers, if someone wants to say, I want to go this way, we would say, you want to go to the east. And as a storyteller, it's reversed because I'm looking the opposite way, so I would say east, even though for me it's west. And that we give a little helpful on the backside, a little compass rose for the storyteller that is reversed, so they can say east or west appropriately depending on how they're facing. Okay, so that's the parlor, but the parlor didn't always look like this. No, 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 this is only the latest version after Renee Jablo, our esteemed paper engineer, has done her masterwork on it. The parlor, when it was first conceived, looked like this. This was my original white prototype I made, as I mentioned, over 3 years ago now. As you can see, it's got a lot of the same elements, our piano and our furniture and table and a fireplace in the back and curtains and pictures on the walls. And it even has the removable story card. And see, all these images are sketched by me in just pencil and paper. And this is how I originally conceived the Shivers, as these crude but semi-effective pop-ups. So let me just get the story card back in here. There we go. Even on the back side, we've got the clue window and the map. You can see it's very crude. That's how we started way back then. And there were no episode guides when I first made this. The episode guide was fully on the back clue window here in this zone. So you had to cram a lot of information in. As you can see my tiny writing there. And then this room description was a lot more verbose here, a lot more text, but it was just way too much reading to read to the players. So that's been trimmed way, way down. So that was my first room I ever tried as a young pop-up maker. Never made a pop-up before. I started with this fireplace here. This was my first piece I attempted, just trying to make a fireplace work. And, probably took me a couple hours, but eventually I figured it out. And then I moved on to some of the other pieces that are in the room. One of the interesting things Renee's brought to the table was I had actuated all my pop-ups in the room, the furniture, with these long straps like this that attach to the back wall that allow it to fold and then pop up. But she's hidden all those straps under the floor, so you don't see those for the most part. A few rooms still have them where we just needed more strength, but mostly they're all hidden under the floor. You can see the magnets here we put in, so my first experimenting with magnets on all the corners. And actually, these early versions, I have little metal springs in the corners here. So it folds closed like this, and then it springs open, which is kind of a funny motion, but that was how I originally conceived it, was you would kind of open it up and pop, there it would go. But I quickly learned that was not the way to do it. So this is why we moved to the more of the kickstand method instead that keeps it propped up. So a lot of fun to work on. Little hidden Easter egg here. There's my blood is on the piano keys right there. Lots of X-Acto wounds when creating your own pop-ups. So bled a few places on this mock-up, but I think that's all part of the Shivers lore that is emerging. Okay, so that was the parlor, the first room I constructed. Let's go to now some of the other rooms. You know the creepy courtyard, which is in the core game. It's a great outdoor kind of mausoleum gravesite courtyard with a big oak tree behind it. And it's got some interesting features. It's got this Grim Reaper statue here with a kind of inscription plaque below it. There's a gravestone here with a little Easter egg inscription on it. It says, "Here lies the body of Mary Lee, died at the age of 103. I'll let some movie sleuths figure out where that's from. And the mausoleum is in the back. It's this large stone structure that opens. And there's a gravestone next to it over here. And that's part of the story card system, so the grave always changes. We have a little hole in the tree, kind of the mouth of the oak tree. There's a little owl in it right now. And then this long, kind of free-swinging tree branch here, reaching out over the courtyard. We have a window here. There's a window right there, up into the house, and the moon as well right here. You can see all those story card elements changing. There's a kind of a gravelly pathway. And originally, Bill illustrated this. It was all very dark and kind of blue and somber. We needed more light to see some details, so he added a light over the mausoleum door, which casts this orange glow, and a little lantern here on the grave, which casts glow in this area. And his special swirly clouds, which I love. So, as it may not surprise you, the courtyard didn't always look like this. At one time, the courtyard looked like this. Okay. So here you have the mausoleum, we have the bird bath fountain, we have a few gravestones, we have the kind of big oak tree with the reaching limb reaching out, the moon above. You know, we're pretty close. Here's how it all kind of folded down. So you can see just how crude these are, and a lot of them are coming apart, sort of, but this is all I needed to start and start playing games with the Shivers, and maybe you might be able to make some crude mock-ups yourself. So that's the mausoleum, for all the hand-drawn story card elements on there. I'm sorry, that's the creepy courtyard. Okay. Next, we have the spooky study. This is kind of the private library of the house. You can see there's a desk and chair there. Something on the rug, I think you'll notice. There's kind of a hidden code there as well. There's a large safe here set into the bookcases, which you usually open in certain episodes. There's also a chair and a desk and a light. So Bill used this main light here on the desk as the light source for the room. So it's casting a bright glow and shadow around all the objects there. We have some interesting pieces on the bookshelves. We have a pyramid and a microscope and a clock here. There's a tiny mouse hole here that is used in some episodes. There's a book here, right there, History of Fogmore. That is our lore booklet, which you can actually read in the game box. Up top we have a globe and a raven and a telescope and a bust of Pallas. I'll let you figure out what the bust of Pallas is all about. It relates to this little raven right here. And we have a curious portrait here, Madame von Draken. She's one of the last living relatives of the von Drakens, and her portrait haunts the study. So, lots of interesting nooks and crannies to explore. Of course, our story card system is working here, but the study did not always look like this. It used to look like this. My original hand-drawn version, which back then I called the private library, and it's got a lot of the same components. You'll see the bookshelves, there's a large safe here, there's a chair that pops up in the middle. I always had trouble getting the chair vertical, so I added this little springy wire here to help it spring back to normal, but I quickly learned that's not how you do things in Pop-Up World. We've got a large picture up top, and lots of those items, the raven, the globe, telescope, and whatnot. And here's our story card with lots of different episodes written on it, which is a little finicky because my prototype is starting to fall apart, but there we go. Okay. Again, all handwritten notes on the back. So that is the Spooky Study original prototype. Okay, next we have the the bleak basement. Here we go, the bleak basement, which you've seen. It's got this large wooden crate in the center, which you can actually open up, look inside. It's got a huge furnace in the back with lots of pipes going throughout. The furnace opens, the little furnace door. There's a gate here that opens on the side, and the furnace has all these pipes coming out with little valves on them, and each valve is labeled with a different room, so you might be able to control the airflow and heat throughout the house potentially. There's a workbench over here, and there's lots of items there. One of the characters is good at crafting items, so he might be able to use those. We've got some graffiti on the walls. It says over here, Ulrich lives. I wonder who that is. And so that is the parlor. I'm sorry, that is the basement. But the basement didn't always, as you can see, as you can tell from the theme of this episode, didn't always look like that. It used to look like this in my original black and white mock-up. So we've got the large crate, we've got the big furnace in the back with all the pipes, with the doors that open. Lots of doors here and here, the story cards that pop in and out. So we've maintained a lot of the aspects from this original prototype of the gloomy basement. So that was the basement. As you can see, very similar to, let's see, where did I put, here we go. Pretty similar to what we actually created. Okay. Next up, let's take a look at the laboratory, as they say overseas, or the loathsome laboratory. Here we go. With this prominent tank in the center, what we call the Acme tank, that actually has a little door that opens up. And various creatures can step out, or you can step in. There's a large table that players often find themselves strapped to. We got some ectoplasm on the floor here, a little spill on aisle 7 next to that grate. We've got these cool power cables coiling onto the wall. Look at that, it says plus and minus up there. It might be good to know for future episodes. There's a crystal ball here. Could be used to give hints in the game for the storyteller, like you see a small glowing key in the crystal ball. That might be a hint. And a shelf full of potions in the back. And a window up high. And look at this, there's some eyes peering out at you from that high grate on top. So here we have all our lighting is from this central lamp here, and it's washing down, illuminating the whole scene. The loathsome laboratory. However, it didn't always look like that. It started originally with this, our initial pop-up of the laboratory. You can see kind of how far it's evolved. You can see the tank used to be round. It was a circular tank. But that proved really hard to do in production. So we went with this more hexagonal version. But a lot of the most common elements are still there. This large table, the tank, these doors that open in the back, little stairway here, the back cabinet. A lot of it is still preserved. And figuring out how to do this tank was probably one of the hardest aspects of figuring out the pop-up for me. That was a challenging one, and it only sort of actually closes in this version. So, the Mysterious Laboratory. Okay, next room, let's do the kitchen. One of my favorite rooms. It's kind of like a French provincial kitchen. It's got this nice stone hearth and stone floor. It's actually one of the cheerier rooms due to the color palette and the kind of warm glow of the lantern of the house. It's got this very large stove here, which has a door you can open to look inside the stove, with this big copper cauldron on top. And all the light in this room is from this lamp here, kind of casting glow and shadow. You can see how it builded the shadow of the table legs, all pointing to that light there. So everything looks like it's self-illuminated in these pop-ups, which looks absolutely amazing. On the table, we've got looks like a recipe here, and a plate, and some oven mitts, and some items up on the shelf there, plates and cooking items and garlic and stuff. And a window up there. Look who's in that window. Seems to be a witch floating by. And a trap door here in the corner. But that was the color version. The kitchen's come a long way since its original version, which is here. My original mock-up. Still has the angled table. So as you can see, large angled table with things on it, stove set against the back rock arch, a big pantry to explore, a window up top, and again the story cards, which you can see are all hand-drawn with pencil and paper. So it was a lot of fun to create these, and I certainly had to use all my artistic skills to just get this far, and that's when I knew I had a good idea, but I couldn't take it any further on my own. I needed to bring in some serious paper engineering and illustration talent to get it to the next level. Okay, what do we have next? Let's see, we did the kitchen. Okay, next we'll look at the room from expansion 1, the crypt, the cryptic crypt. A very Gothic-inspired room with this greenish glowing light, a large coffin in the middle and another coffin on the back wall. We have an altar along the back wall with this neat manuscript here that's kind of interchangeable with different story cards, and a really cool stained glass window up along the top that's interchangeable, and all the illustrations are stained glass style. And then there's some interesting windows here that have a code hidden in them you'll discover. Von Draken, it says here on the front of the altar, which is the family that lives in Fogmore Manor, or did live. Look at this. There's a little key hidden in the floor. I wonder what that's for. So here's the beautiful cryptic crypt. And then the original version, I think as you're seeing, looks very similar. So we have a large coffin out front, 3 big stained glass windows in the back, and coffins on the back wall, and a pedestal and altar. So pretty similar in this mock-up here. Originally we called it the shadowy crypt, but I like keeping the alliteration of cryptic crypt, peculiar parlor, spooky study, so always starting with the same letter. And this one I actually had never developed any story cards for, so this is a template. I would rotate it each time and trace the windows to see what kind of material I had to work with there for episodes. All right, that was the crypt. And one of the last rooms in the game that comes in expansion 2 is called the Naughty Nursery. The Naughty Nursery, here we go. This comes in the second expansion. It's a little child's room, which I love that it's a little more whimsical. There's got some toys laying around on the floor. There's some books Bill illustrated, actually another project he worked on. He snuck in some Easter egg illustrations there. And I believe on this back door here, he put some of his kids' illustrations scanned in on that back wall, which is really fun. There's a little tiny version of Fogmore Manor here on the dollhouse. Like that, with a note on the table. And if you peer inside the dollhouse, you'll actually see yourself looking back. There's an interesting rug here with some hidden symbols on it. And the bed even opens up with this little sheet cover that opens. We can hide things under the sheets, which will be fun to explore. I love the color palette here. It's very kind of contrasty, unsettling, bright colors like a goodnight moon kind of illustration, which always is a bit off-putting in a children's environment. We've got some portraits on the wall here. We've got 3 triplets, it looks like, on the back, on top. We've got a skull here. See if anyone can figure out where that skull is from. And we've got a strange symbol here, a Chinese symbol. And a few other Easter eggs hidden. But the nursery, of course, had humble beginnings, and it started out looking more like this. So we had that dollhouse there. We actually had a bed with kind of a fabric canopy on it. And the dollhouse was really hard for me to create, so that's why it's falling apart. But you can actually look inside and see little things inside. The bed, again, had that kind of fabric that we discovered is too hard to do in production. And there was a large wardrobe back here. Some pictures on the walls. And then that rug with some symbols on it. So, that's the original children's nursery. Okay, last, I promised you a special sneak peek at one room that never made it. So this was one room we had to drop from the game just because we had too many rooms and we had to down select to a smaller set to move with. So this room here, the Master's Chambers, hasn't seen the light of day yet. Very few have seen it, but it's just a large bedroom with a big canopy bed with kind of Gothic arch headboard behind it, a large wardrobe off to the side here that would open up. If we can get it to open, there we go. Wardrobe that opens, and a little cabinet over here that would open, and look at this, a mirror that dangled on a piece of string, and you could move the mirror and look behind it to see some items. And those were all part of the clue window system. So maybe you'll see the Master's Chambers in some future episode. Maybe we'll release it in a different expansion. I think we need a bedroom. We already have the children's nursery, but I feel like an adult bedroom would be interesting. So, the hidden room, the hidden 9th room no one's really ever seen. It's right here. All right, well, we've taken you through all 8 of the main rooms in the Shivers game and the deluxe expansions, and you got to see their humble origins with the original white hand-drawn, hand-cut, pencil and paper, blood-stained prototypes that I made a few years ago to test out this crazy idea of a pop-up you could play. And it's been a lot of fun sharing that journey with you, and it will be fun developing new pop-ups and showing you how those evolve as well as we expand the world of the Shivers. Thank you and take care. Goodbye.